Dr. Anthony Harper here, blessed to be with Clare Lopez, who I met. I had met you recently at October 7th event in Washington, D.C., and you're one of the speakers there, and you have concerns about what's happening with Israel, a very sobering time, that 1-year anniversary. So share with our audience why you were there and your concerns about what Israel has been going through.
Well, I have to first extend my thanks, my gratitude, and my admiration for Edwin Black, who, together with help from others, including Ken Abramowitz and others, put together an amazing program on October the 7th this year, 2024, up on Capitol Hill. We were in a room in the Rayburn building, and they managed to put together short talks from people actually in the room, like myself, like yourself and others, and merge and mingle that with pre-recorded videos from all over the world, Canada, UK, Israel, elsewhere, and then together with live Zooms from some of those places around the world too. And somehow they made it all work, got it all together. It was really amazing. And it was just a remarkable program. I know that they're working on the post-production right now, and that full recording of the event, which lasted a couple of hours, should be up online, I believe, shortly. I hope within a few days or the next week or so, maybe after Sukkot.
Okay. People could, of course, learn more about Edwin Black, the organizer of that event. He's written many books. He's got several websites, I know. But for you have contact information about your history. You were involved with the CIA, and some history there. Can you explain about their viewers?
Sure.
What your CIA experience was?
Well, originally, I actually wanted to be a journalist. I love writing, and I wanted to see the world. And I thought that would be the way to do it. But the school that I went to for undergraduate, Notre Dame College of Ohio, which sadly has recently closed, did not offer a journalism major. So for me and a couple of the other girls, it was an all-women's school, they put together kind of a makeshift major, and they called it communications. So I graduated with communications and French, a double major. And I was editor of the school newspaper, but that really didn't prepare me for a professional career as a journalist. So when I went on to graduate school, Maxwell School of Syracuse University, my master's degree is in international relations, and there the study program had a Russia focus at the time, middle of the Cold War. And the agency came to campus, as many others do, to interview students, prospective hires. And they interviewed a few of us in that program. And I guess they must have liked me, because they accepted me. And off I went to a 20-year career there, followed by, after that came 9/11. And this is more to our point. After 9/11, I really didn't know, who was responsible for that. My whole focus for the previous 20 years had really been mostly Russia and other places where I served, the specific countries, but not the Middle East. And so I began a deep dive into Islam, the Middle East, Israel, Iran, and being in the area, the metropolitan area of Washington, D.C., I got to attend a lot of events that are put on by think tanks, luncheon speakers, conferences, and so forth. And that's how I began to learn about the Middle East. I went on then to be executive director of the Iran Policy Committee for a couple of years, an Iran-focused think tank in Washington, D.C. Began then my study of Farsi, which continues to this day. I'm a very slow student, but my teacher says that I'm in 4th grade or so, although I think 4th graders probably would run circles around me in Farsi. But in any case, after that, I also spent about 10 years associated with the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C., 4 as a senior fellow, and another 6 as the vice president for research and analysis. But now I am independent, Lopez Liberty LLC, and I do a lot of consulting on national security issues, including the Middle East, of course, but also Russia, Ukraine, and new focus for me over the past 4-something years, China and Taiwan situation, as well as domestically focused on the Islamic movement here in the United States, represented by the Muslim Brotherhood and all of its front groups, united in a political organization umbrella group called the USCMO, United States Council of Muslim Organizations. Also, I work closely with Tom Trento and the United West, and we have focused in the past a lot on our southern border. So there's that. And more recently now, there too, our focus has been on the Middle East, Israel, with which group, by the way, Tom Trento and the UnitedWest.com. I've been to Israel multiple times. And so ever since October the 7th, I mean, before too, but certainly after October the 7th, a real focus for us at the United West.
You've been involved with so many really important key issues, and I've met you at several different events. You've been to the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, maybe?
No, never. Unfortunately, I would like to, but I have never been invited.
What about CPAC?
I have spoken in the past at CPAC, yes, and I would love to go back again at some point, sure.
Okay, and we both know Frank Gaffney. Frank Gaffney is fairly well known in evangelical Christian circles. How did you get to know Frank Gaffney with that, what is called Strategic Policy Institute?
Center for Security Policy, and it happened because I attended some of those luncheon meetings that I mentioned in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay. Getting back to Israel, what is your main concern about what has been happening, about the White House and their policy about the way Israel's being treated?
Right. So, of course, the origins of these conflicts in the Middle East go way back, certainly to, the rise of Islam in the Middle East. Certainly after the hijrah of Muhammad, if he ever lived, we're not sure, but we'll just say that he did, from Mecca to Medina in the year 622, followed very shortly thereafter by unleashing of violent jihad against the Jewish tribes, the Banu Kanuka, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Qurayza, who lived and worked as basically palm tree farmers, palm grove farmers, on the Arabian Peninsula. Jihad against them wiped them out, and then burst out of the Middle East, the Arabian Peninsula, as it came to be called, in directions east, west, north, and over the following centuries conquered huge swaths of what is the Middle East, but of course also on up into Europe, certainly southeastern Europe, the Iberian Peninsula, and all the way, of course, as we know, to the gates of Vienna in 1683. There, the Turkish Ottoman Empire finally defeated by the largest cavalry charge, we are told, in the history of cavalry charges, by King Jan Sobieski of Poland and his mounted cavalry, rescuing the city of Vienna in 1683, together with the Reconquista on the Iberian Peninsula, that took something like 700 or 800 years to complete. The Islamic jihadis were pushed out of Europe eventually. They had gone all across West Africa, Northern Africa, I should say, and now, as we're seeing, the slaughter continues against Christians in Nigeria, moving down the west coast of Africa, going the other direction, and the The conquest went all the way as far east as India, rescued there the Hindus slaughtered by the millions, their temples desecrated and destroyed, mosques built over on top of them, rescued in the end, as it were, by the British, colonial power in that day. But that is why India today is a thriving, the largest democracy, democratic form of government, society, country on the face of the earth. But back to the Middle East, the Levant was conquered early on in the 630s. Jerusalem fell, I think it was in 636, if I remember right. And of course, under Islam, the doctrine of sacred space prevails. The doctrine of sacred space says that any land ever occupied or conquered by Islam is forever waqf, W-A-Q-F, Arabic word waqf. It means land endowed by Allah, by God, to Muslims in perpetuity. And if ever lost, that land must be fought for and fought for until it is regained. This is part of why we see what is going on in the jihad forces today, led, armed, funded, trained by the Islamic Republic of Iran, why we see their proxies, its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Hashd Shabi in Iraq, etc., all trying to encircle the Jewish state of Israel, modern day nation state in the ancient land of the Jewish people, modern day nation state established, of course, in 1948 formally, encircle that with, as they call it, the Iranian regime calls it, ring of fire. To the south was Hamas, to the north was Hezbollah, and now to the east, immediately east, the Iranian regime is attempting to destabilize the Hashemite monarchy in Jordan. So that's kind of a brief, overview. The last thing I'll say is one more bit of doctrine, Islamic doctrine, and that is the doctrine of so-called dhimitude. In the Quran itself are passages that refer to the dhimma. That means the subjugated people or the subordinate people. And those would be, again, anybody conquered non-Muslims by the armies of Islam, and that includes the Jews. And when Muhammad, again, if he ever lived, but let's say he did, when he was finally able to march into Medina, and by the way, the word Medina is an Arabic word, it simply means the city, but it's located to the north of Mecca, up along the western coast of the Arabian Peninsula, this being north of Mecca. Well, the forces of Islam moved into Medina in the year 630, and out of that conquest came a charter called the Medina Charter. And under that are the rules, specified rules of a dhimmi people, subordinate, subjugated, conquered people. And in particular, that meant the Jews, but also Christians. And if anybody ever wonders to this day where Hitler and the Nazis got the idea for the yellow star patch that had to be on the clothing of Jews back in the 1930s and forward until the 40s, until the Nazis were defeated, that yellow star, that wasn't Hitler's idea. That came from the Charter of Mecca. I'm sorry, the Charter of Medina. It is stipulated in the provisions of that charter that Jews had to wear a yellow patch on their clothing, front and back, so they could be seen coming and going. Christians had to wear a blue patch, as I recall, and I think also maybe a blue sash around the middle to identify them as Christians and non-Muslims who could be abused, shoved into the muddy part of the road as they were walking, not allowed to own weapons, not allowed to ride horses, but only a lowly mule or donkey. Many other restrictive rules and regulations. So that is how the Middle East got to be where it is. It was ruled by Muslims from those early conquests all the way through World War I, in which finally the final caliphate, the Turkish Ottoman Empire, was defeated in World War I. And following out of that, of course, came the move to reestablish formally a Jewish country in the land of the ancestors Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all of them, as we read in Genesis of the Bible, of the Tanakh, of the Torah. And so it happened that under the League of Nations, preceded by the Balfour Declaration of 1917, preceded also by the San Remo document out of that convention, that conference that took place in 1920. And by 1922, the League of Nations had distributed the former lands of the Ottoman Empire, which was no longer occupying the Levant regions, but had been reduced to the country of Turkey and the boundaries that we know of it as today. And the British were given a very large chunk of the Levant, the British mandate, in order to prepare it. Those were their orders from the League of Nations, to prepare that land for a newly established modern day nation state for the Jewish people. Well, because the British had a soft spot for the Hashemite clan that previously had ruled in Mecca until Ibn Saud in the 1920s was uniting the tribes and conquering the tribes, the clans of the peninsula, and the poor Hashemites got kicked out. But they had fought with the British against the Turks in World War I, and the British felt kind of bad for them. You know, they got a raw deal. So, you know, the poor little Hashemites. So the British carved out more than 70%, 75, 77% of the mandate that the League of Nations had assigned to them to prepare for the Jewish people, and just gave it to the Hashemites and placed Abdullah on the throne in Amman. That is the grandfather Abdullah of the current King Abdullah, in between this Abdullah's father Hussein. And so the Jewish people were left with a much smaller slice of land to be their new nation state, but they said, yes, we'll take it. They prepared to establish their modern day nation state. The United Nations, of course, succeeded the League of Nations, and succeeded as well in its preparation of that land for the Jewish people, but once again decided to divide the land between the Arabs and the Jews. And once again, the Jews said, yes, we'll take it, we'll build our nation. And of course, then on May the 15th, in 1948, speaking in Tel Aviv, Ben-Gurion, who became the first prime minister of the modern day nation state of Israel, declared Israel. And what happened? Immediately, 5 neighboring countries, including this newly established, that never existed before in the history of the world, country they called Jordan, after the Jordan River, of course, invaded Israel. And that offensive, I mean, that's kind of a quick wrap up of centuries of history, but that's where we are today. That's why we're where we are today, and why the offensive, the Islamic doctrinal, this is an obligation. People have to understand it is an obligation for every Muslim on the face of the earth for all time to engage in jihad. Jihad in the books of law, which I've read in English, define jihad as warfare against the non-Muslim. That's what this is. The Jews have, in their opinion, in their view, doctrinal Islam, have no right to a nation state of their own, to not be dhimmi, subjugated people, and to be the technological, military, modern day nation state powerhouse that they are. That's why we're where we're at. And we can talk about the difference between Sunni and Shiite, but in short, there isn't any.
Well, my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, about Sunni being less, you might say, fanatical than
You mean
Shia.
like Al-Qaeda, Taliban?
Yeah, yeah.
Less fanatic.
So Taliban or the Shia
Are
version.
Sunni. They are Sunni.
Ah,
And so is Al-Qaeda, Sunni.
so yeah, we are aggressive on both sides.
So I'm not quite seeing the less fanatical part.
Well, actually, there isn't, because it was, I think, a misunderstanding about Sunni being, less.
I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but a simple reading of the Quran would clear that up. And here's the thing, back to history again. Upon the death, as reported, as believed, of Muhammad in the year 632, there was a disagreement about whom should replace him, succeed him. The majority said we should sit down among ourselves and choose the next leader, and we'll decide among ourselves whom that should be. And as it turned out, it was a cousin of Muhammad, and his name was Abu Bakr, and he was the first caliph. After him comes Omar, then Uthman, and then finally Ali. Ali, of course, the son-in-law of Muhammad, as they believe, married to Muhammad's daughter Fatima. The Shiites, on the other hand, Shia means it's kind of an abbreviation for Shi'ali, the followers of Ali. And again, Ali, the son-in-law of Muhammad, as they recount it, and they were the much smaller number. The Sunnis were the much larger number and continue to be so to this day in the world. Within Islam, probably about at least 75% of the world's Muslims are Sunni. The rest divvied up among Shiites and a few smaller sects. But in any case, this all came to a head historically at the Battle of Karbala in what is now today Iraq, when the Sunni followers and the followers of Ali, now on down, Ali was assassinated, we're on down now to his son Hussein at the Battle of Karbala, and they were slaughtered. They were defeated completely by the Sunni Caliph Muawiyah, and I guess one maybe successor, some male successor of Hussein did survive the battle, although the rest of the whole family was slaughtered by the Sunnis, because the Shiites then had a succession of imams and imamates. So down the line, father, son, for the Shiite side. On the Sunni side, as we said, it was a succession of caliphs and caliphates until World War I, when that was abolished by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk after World War I. But so the Shiites today, really led by the Islamic Republic of Iran, as it calls itself, they are called Twelvers. And the reason they're called Twelvers is that in this line of father, son, father, son, father, son, went down to the 800s, when the 12th imam, as he would have been, of that lineage, fell down a well, was a little boy, and he drowned. Yikes, what to do? There's no heir. How do we continue the lineage? So what the Shiites did is they said, oh, wait, he's not really dead. He's in occultation, that is, in hiding. And he's all around us. You can't see him, but he's here. He's in the room with us. And at the end of times, that 12th imam will come back to earth. He is the messianic figure, not just of Shiites, I should say, but both Shiites and Sunnis believe in a messianic figure they call the Mahdi. Now, the Mahdi for Sunnis is just an unnamed, unidentified successor, descendant of Muhammad. But for Shiites, it's the little boy. It's the 12th imam. He's the Mahdi, and he will come back at the end of times and usher in the day of judgments, break the cross, kill the pig, as they say, awfully. But the important thing to bring this up to the current day is that belief is firmly held by the entire top ranks of the Iranian regime today. meaning the clerical hierarchy and meaning the military IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Pastoran, the Quds Force, all of them ideologically vetted to be in those organizations or to go through seminary, theological seminary in Qom on the part of the clerics. But all of them believe in this, but they add another element. They all think that they can accelerate the return of the Mahdi, of the 12th Imam to earth, to usher in the end times, day of judgment, whereas the Sunnis think, well, he'll come back, the Mahdi will come back whenever he thinks it's time, it's up to him, we don't know. But the Shiites say, if we can instigate enough chaos and strife and warfare on earth, that'll bring the Mahdi back sooner than he otherwise might have come. And we can have 1,000 years of Islamic rule because that's what they believe the Mahdi will usher in. Now, this is a regime that is driving pell-mell for a deliverable nuclear weapon.
Getting very close, aren't we? Really serious.
I think they are very close, yes.
Yeah, concern about Israel going after Iran. The Biden administration seems to be worried about how they're going to deal with that. And it could, I think a lot of people might concern they might catapult us into World War III. It's important, as you mentioned, to know this history, and thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Now, the current administration here in the United States, that is the Harris-Biden administration of the last 3.5, now almost 4 years, you have to understand, literally loathe Israel, loathe the Prime Minister of Israel, democratically elected, the only democratic society country in the entire Middle East, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who depends, Israel depends to a great extent on United States friendship, alliance, backing, and in particular military support. And so, of course, immediately after the October 7 Shabbat massacre of last year, 2023, when Hamas jihadis followed closely behind, by the way, by something like several thousand innocent civilian Gazans. By the way, who are Hamas? They're the father, sons, brothers, and father, son, husband, father, sons, brothers of the Gazan people. When they attacked, invaded the kibbutzim and the communities right around the border between Gaza and Israel. But the United States immediately, and of course, President Biden made a trip over to Israel shortly after that attack, pledged ironclad United States support to Israel. But unfortunately, very quickly, both he and Vice President Kamala Harris backed away from that in holding back weapons that were needed, certain categories of ammunition that were very much needed by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, as they began their clearing operation against Hamas and PIJ, by the way, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is Shiite, by the way, more directly connected, founded by Iran. But the clearing operation there in Gaza, backing away from those earlier ironclad promises. But what I will say is that I think there are a couple of tiers to the United States policy vis-a-vis Israel. There is the diplomatic tier, out of which we hear these statements from President Biden, from Vice President Harris, from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and at every opportunity, every time there's a corner turned, oh, let's do a ceasefire. Let's do a ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Don't go into Rafah. Don't. And so Bibi, as he's called, Prime Minister Netanyahu, maintains a very cordial and diplomatic relationship. And then he goes and does what Israel must do, and that is defeat Hezbollah entirely in Gaza so that it can never again govern in Gaza or threaten the people, the nation of Israel. But on the other level, and we see this visibly, certainly within the last few days, as the the THAAD system, anti-aircraft batteries. Now I understand there are 2 that have been delivered. Anti-aircraft system are being delivered to Israel, along with about 100 crew members per battery, I think, to operate them and to add, depth and extra, backing to the multi-layered Israeli, as I said, multi-layered anti-aircraft defense systems. Iron Dome for the short range, and in the middle you've got David Sling and Magic Wand, and then at the longer range, of course, Arrow, especially Arrow 3. And of course, we have Patriot missiles over there as well. So 2 tiers going on here. Don't always listen, to the sound bites coming over the evening news, but look at what's actually happening on the ground.
A tremendous, very intense in Gaza regarding Rafah and its border with Egypt there. There's a lot more people need to know about this in the Middle East, the history. And I think of also the whole Palestine narrative, or the word Palestinian, being related to that Roman Emperor Hadrian that created this lie that we have today that there's a Palestinian race of people.
Right. So yeah, I'll do real quick on that. I've actually been to Rome, by the way, and seen the Arco Tito, as it's called, and on the inner side, the walls of that arch in downtown Rome are bas-relief carvings of the Roman soldiers carting off the menorah and other treasures looted from the Jewish Second Temple. So what happened is that over all the centuries of the Roman conquest of the Levant, and their domination of what they called the province of Judea, because Jewish people, it was called, the Romans called it the province of Judea, the Judean province. But of course, the Jewish people didn't like being under Roman rule, and they revolted every now and then. And in about 134, 135, current era, there was a revolt led by the Bar Kokhba clan, and they lost again. But this time the Romans were like up to here with these troublesome Jews. And so they not only defeated them, exiled them, slaughtered, thousands of them, but they decided to change the name of the place, to erase the name of the Jewish people from any connection to the land. And so the Romans, went back into what Christians call the Old Testament, or the Tanakh, and they found the name of ancient enemies of the Israelite people, and these were the Philistines, whom your listeners may know are Indo-European people who came out of the Mediterranean area, the Aegean Sea. They were called the island people at the conclusion of the Trojan War. And a bunch of them came south to the southeastern littoral of the Mediterranean Sea and settled there, and they were called the Philistines, and they can be found in the Bible. Well, the Romans went back hunting for something, to call this province, this troublesome province, except Judea, and they hit upon Philistines. And that's where the name came from. They called it Philistia in, I guess, Latin. And that's where the name came from. But it wasn't the name of a people ever, because there are no such people, never existed, never had a country, never had a nation. It was just the name that the Romans slapped on the region. Like if we would call, these are the Great Lakers. Well, what are the Great Lakers? That's not a people. That's a region, a geographical region of the upper Midwest of the United States, right? So it's kind of like that. And the name didn't really, stick around until the 1960s, when Yasser Arafat, who, by the way, was born in Cairo, Egypt, he's Egyptian, was Egyptian, working together with the KGB, decided to form a new organization, and they hunted around for a name, and they hit upon, we'll call it the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLO. So they grabbed that name from antiquity, slapped it on their new organization. It later became Palestinian Liberation Organization. But that's where it came from. There's never been a nation. There's never been a people. There's never been a country. There's never been a capital. There's never been a parliament or a president or anything else Palestinian. So basically, I would just never use the word. If they're Gazans, we can call them Arabs or Muslims who live in Gaza, or maybe it's Arabs or Muslims who live in Judea or Samaria, and describe them like that.
Yeah, that Jerusalem, I don't see that as large enough for. Well, it's not as large as people might think. It's not like a city of Los Angeles, but
no, not that big.
No. Jerusalem, a very special place, and you've been there before.
Yes, multiple times, to the Kotel, the wall, all over Jerusalem in all the different quarters. I don't think we went into the Muslim quarter, but we went into the others, the Jewish quarter for sure. And just an amazing place, as well as all the rest of Israel. Been, again, with Tom Trento's team, the United West, all over Israel.
Sure. Thank you, Claire, for sharing this valuable background, this information regarding the Middle East, and looking forward to what happens next for Israel and be able to bring peace and deal with all the, you might say, evil there in the Middle East. Within the recent news of Hamas leaders being killed, what's going to be what's going to be happening with Iran? What do you expect Israel can do with Israel? The United States tying their hands somewhat in response to.
Well, they're not tying their hands. That's the whole point. I don't know how much time we have left. Is it like 10 minutes or something, or?
Yeah, just a few more minutes, but if you can say.
Okay, I'll go quickly then. So what Israel under, I mean, the amazing leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu. By the way, take a look at his book, his autobiography. It's about yay thick. It's over 700 pages long. It's called Bibi, My Story. Took me months to read it, but so well worth the time. The plan, again, is to eliminate any possibility of Hamas ever again governing administratively the Gaza Strip, or posing any kind of a military jihadi terrorist threat to the Jewish state of Israel. And they're well on their way to doing that. You just mentioned, just very recently, within the last few days, they finally, actually by chance, came upon and eliminated Yahya Sinwar, who'd been the military head of Hamas in Gaza earlier. Other allies, close, military leadership for him, like Mohammed Deif, had been eliminated. And then, of course, was the amazing precision strike against the political head of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, who'd been living in luxurious digs in Doha, Qatar, for all of these years. But he took a trip to Tehran, to Iran, and there, in a special neighborhood of Tehran, supposedly guarded carefully by the Pasdaran, an explosive device found its way into the room where he was staying, and he was dispatched off to meet his virgin some weeks ago. So one by one, Israel has been taking down the leadership of Hamas. Leadership now could be Yahya Sinwar's brother Mohammed, possibly Khalid Mashal, who also hangs out in Doha, Qatar. Could be him. Not sure how that succession will go. But at the same time now, and after Hamas, because Hezbollah began to attack even more than they were before, Israel and its northern communities, kibbutzim, in the northern part of Israel, immediately after October 7, beginning literally October the 8th last year, Israel had to evacuate, I've seen different numbers, 60, 70,000, maybe more, of its own citizens from the northern part of Israel, where we've been on those kibbutzim, and evacuate them to more southerly places that are safer, at least from the kind of rockets and not missiles so much, but rockets. Anti-tank rockets is what they were using, but safer down there from those launches. And now the IDF has gone into southern Lebanon, and what they're doing is actually enforcing the provisions of a United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 that was agreed to by the United Nations Security Council way back in 2006, right after that war concluded. And the provisions of that 1701 resolution said that UNIFIL, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, made up of troops from different countries around the world in the UN, their job was to clear out southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River, which runs kind of east-west across the middle of Lebanon, more or less, and to clear the area south of that, maybe 10 miles worth or so down to the Israeli border, but clear that of Hezbollah and all of its military means, and clear that all to the north of Litani River. Well, they never did that. Also, the Lebanese armed forces never helped out with that either. So now, by the way, the United States didn't either. After we got hit in 1983 by Hezbollah at our embassy and our Marine Corps barracks, what did Ronald Reagan, whom I adored, but nevertheless, what did he do on the advice of his defense secretary at the time, Caspar Weinberger, against the advice of one of our dear friends and brilliant military mind, just wonderful guy, the now departed former admiral, 4-star admiral James Ace Lyons, who retired as the commander of the Pacific Fleet, but at the time in the Mediterranean. And Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, decided to ignore his advice, Ace Lyons' advice, to go after the new. I mean, at the time, Hezbollah was just beginning to be formed in the early 80s. Go after them right now, strangle them in the crib, hit the King Abdullah barracks, as they were called, in the Bekaa Valley, and finish Hezbollah. But Cap Weinberger said to Reagan, no, we can't do that because then the Arabs will lose all of them and they won't be our friends anymore. And unfortunately, Reagan listened to him and withdrew our forces. But in any case, we didn't help enforce 1701 either, but now the Israelis are doing it for us all.
So more importantly, about how to deal with Ayatollah.
That's next.
What's
going
to happen if Ayatollah is removed?
Well, if you're talking about the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he knows perfectly well, hiding somewhere way down in his little bunker, that Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General, former of Hezbollah, was taken out along with, I don't know, 10 or a dozen of his comrades that included IRGC officers, taken out, I don't know, 60 floors down in a bunker. And how'd that happen? It happened because the IAF, the Israeli Air Force, flew something like 83, if I remember, F-15s, each one carrying a 2,000-pound bomb, and dropped it right over the bunker. One, the next one, precision bombing right down the hole. Then the next one, the next, down the hole, until the hole reached all the way to the bottom. And Hassan Nasrallah also went off to meet his virgins. So the Ayatollah Khamenei knows how it could be done. And certainly now, after the, we're speaking here on Monday, the 21st of October, yesterday, early morning Israeli time, Hezbollah launched an Iranian-made drone at the Caesarea, Israel residence of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, he and his wife, nobody was home. The drone apparently hit and broke a glass window and caused some damage to the side of a building. No casualties, thank goodness. But I would say, that was the green light for Israel, an assassination attempt against the Prime Minister of Israel. Green light for Israel to respond proportionately, right? I mean, that's proportionate would be, right? Wouldn't it?
Yes, I understand. This is a serious issue. I mean, what's going to be happening once the Ayatollah is being removed? From my understanding, a lot of people in Iran want to be free from all the oppression. As you've mentioned, Iran is the key source in funding all this terrorism. Without the
Yes.
Ayatollah, without Iran, then Hezbollah dries up, doesn't it?
Well, Iran has been methodically stripped of its proxy jihadi forces, Hamas, PIJ, Hezbollah, and also the United States has been pitching in a little bit with some of the Hashd-e-Shabi, the Shiite militias there in Iraq that operate there and in whatever's left of Syria. But yes, Iran now stands pretty much alone without the insurance policy, if you want to think of it like that, of either Hamas or of Hezbollah. And you know, what can they do? What would they do? In Farsi, as they say, bebinim chemishe. We shall see what happens.
We shall see. And for more information, repeat where people can find information about you.
Right. So unfortunately, I do not have my own website yet, but I post at Twitter at Clare M. Lopez. Same, Clare M. Lopez at Facebook. I'm at Clarecho, Clarecho, on Truth Social, and I'm at Lopez Liberty on Telegram. I also post interviews like this one, and I write also at Newsmax. I have my own blog site there called In Defense of Liberty. So all of those get posted up at places like the United West, the American Truth Project. Take a look at that website. My writing and interviews go there too. Also, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, Sarja Sangari, whose program, by the way, I'm going to be on later on tonight. But my pieces and writing and interviews are posted there too. So have a look at least at those different places. And One American News, where I'm a frequent guest, either in remote, like a Zoom interview, or very often on the John Hines Weekend Roundup, Weekend Roundtable program on the panel in their studios up there on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Clare, for sharing this valuable experience and knowledge. And the peace comes to the Middle East here very soon. Looking forward to meeting you again at another special event. So
thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to be with you and your audience. Thanks again.